Hey guys, Paul here at the What the Hell podcast. Glad to have you back. We are starting part 4 of our ongoing theme, Is Jesus God? And today we're going to talk about weddings. That's right, weddings. Jesus called himself the bridegroom. Now you might ask, what in the heck do brides and grooms and weddings have to do with the Bible and Jesus? Well, it turns out quite a lot. It's actually a really big deal. You might still be in shock and might still be surprised finding out that the phrase "Jesus is God" isn't found anywhere in your Bible. It doesn't exist in there. I know I was shocked too when I found it out. It kind of bothered me for a while, actually. But that was only because I didn't have the proper understanding of who he was saying he was. And that is my goal, to try to help us along to better understand that. Jesus never called himself God, not directly, but he did use a whole lot of other ways to refer to himself and titles that he gave to himself. And one of those many ways is the bridegroom. And that's what we're going to look at right now. You might ask, why the bridegroom? Why the analogy and the metaphor and the wedding imagery? What does it have to do with anything? What does it even mean? Let's look at an example of Jesus doing this. We're going to turn to the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew chapter 9, verses 14 and 15. Then the disciples of John, that's John the Baptizer, came to him saying, "Why do we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?" And Jesus said to them, "Can the wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast." Here Jesus is being asked the question as to why his disciples don't fast like the Pharisees and the disciples of John the Baptizer. Johnny B, as we like to call him around here. Why don't they fast like we do? And his response, he refers to himself as the bridegroom. And to his disciples, he refers to them as the wedding guests. Why does he do this? Well, one reason is during the first century, a wedding party would be the exact opposite of fasting. The person he's giving this response to would have for sure have understood this analogy without any further explanation. When you are fasting, you go without food. It's not pleasant. It's not a good time. And however, at a first century wedding, there was lots of food. A first century wedding, it was a 7-day long, a week long party. And I mean a rager of a party. And it was a feast. So there was lots of eating. So here they're talking about fasting in juxtaposition of a week-long wedding party full of drinking and eating and feasting. And this would have been for all of the guests of the wedding, which would have included their entire families, both the bride's entire family, and I mean the entire family, the groom's entire family, all of their friends, and even their entire neighborhood. This was a huge, big deal. It was a communal thing. The whole community would have been at these weddings. And when I say it's a party, it's a party. So you can clearly see the contrast between the wedding feast and fasting. The wedding feast being the complete antithesis of fasting. And Jesus said, if the bridegroom is present, why would the guests mourn? Because if the bridegroom is here, that means it's party time. Not time to mourn, not time to be glum, not time to fast, but time to be with and time to eat and feast with the bridegroom. When the bridegroom is gone, then it would be appropriate to fast because the feasting and the party is over. Quickly, I'd like to point something out here. Remember last episode, we talked about Jesus being the bread of life. Now, what do you do with bread? You eat it. You can't eat bread if you're fasting. And now we have a scenario about fasting and Jesus saying, my guest, the bridegroom's guest, should be eating while in his presence. What did Jesus say he was? What did he say was everlasting food that you should eat to never hunger again? Himself, the bread of life. There are definitely some connections to be made there. There's another passage in Matthew chapter 22, verses 1 through 12, I believe. And it's a parable that Jesus tells. And this parable is a story about a late arriving bridegroom, a groom late to his own wedding. And the story is directed at the guests, the people attending this wedding. So he's running late. The guests are there, and he tells them to wait patiently and wait vigilantly for his arrival because he is coming. You just don't know when. He's saying, just be ready, be vigilant, because I am coming. I'm not going to miss my own wedding. And in this case, Jesus is speaking in the future tense about when he's going to return after his death. And he's coming back to claim his bride. Another example of this is actually John the Baptizer talking about his cousin Jesus. So we got Johnny B talking to cuz Jesus. And for this one, we're going to turn to the Gospel of John. Chapter 3, verse 29. And this is Johnny B. The one who has the bride is the bridegroom. The friend of the bridegroom who stands and hears him rejoices greatly at the bridegroom's voice. Therefore, this joy of mine is now complete. So what does Johnny B actually mean by this? What exactly is he saying? Wedding imagery and analogy is huge in the Bible. I mean, huge. It's one of the biggest themes that go all throughout the Bible. And somehow, I really don't understand how, but somehow it's also one of the most missed and overlooked themes by everyone throughout the Bible. I really don't know how. And I mean, it is a really, really big deal. Because the Bible begins with a wedding, it ends with a wedding. And there are wedding analogy and imagery all throughout. And I mean, it begins with one. The first pages of the Bible begins with a wedding. All the way in the very last few pages of the Bible, there is a wedding. So it's a really big deal, guys. I can't stress it enough. On this analogy, the world, God's creation, is his bride. And God is the bridegroom. And the thing that solidifies the marriage to one another is the presence of the bridegroom. Presence of the bridegroom with his bride. In the beginning, in Genesis, you have God, and he is present here on earth in the Garden of Eden, and he's living and dwelling right along with Adam and Eve. And that presence of God, living right along with his creation, signifies the marriage between God, the bridegroom, and creation, his bride. They were together, they were one. So what John the Baptizer is saying here, he says, the one who has the bride is the bridegroom, God. He has the world, his bride. And that is a direct reference to God as bridegroom that everyone of the time would have understood. For some reason, like we've found out many times for many things, only the people of our time don't get this. So they would have all got this. It wouldn't even have been, they wouldn't have needed a podcast or a Bible study or anyone to tell them. They would have just known. These are just simple understandings. But Johnny B says, I am not the bridegroom. I'm the friend of the bridegroom. I'm a groomsman in the wedding. I'm the bridegroom's best man. And when the best man hears the voice of the bridegroom, he rejoices. Why? Because that means the wedding is about to take place. The party is about to start. Then he says, this joy of mine is now complete. So do you see what's happening here? Are you making these connections along with Johnny B? Are you picking up what Johnny B's laying down for us? The connections between God, Jesus, the world, all these things tied together. And if you tie them together properly and you make the right connections with what is being said here, there's only one result. There's only one that you could form if you're putting these together. And that makes this seemingly mostly unimportant verse that really didn't mean much to us before. It makes it all of a sudden become extremely important, an extremely loaded statement of extraordinary proportions. Now, I'm not going to take this final step for you and say what's being said without saying it. I'm not going to take this final little step for you. And I mean, it's just a little step. I mean, it's a baby tiptoe here. But I'm not going to do it for you. But I hope to have helped you to get to the point where you can take that step and make these connections on your own. Because that's my goal. I'm not trying to push anything on anyone. I'm not going to tell you anything of my own. The only thing I'm going to do is relay what this book says and help you along to where you can arrive at the point where you can take that step and help you add layer upon layer in piece and put it together and formulate a satisfactory, full picture and understanding of who God is, of who Jesus is saying he is in these books, to understand them and the words within them, because there's nothing more important. So there you have it. We're going to stop there. The bridegroom, weddings. Who would have thought that's what we'd be talking about? Is Jesus God? I'm really excited for the next episode. I'm so excited for it. It's going to be a big one. I really can't wait, guys. Not that any of these have been minute in comparison or not as awesome, but it's going to be really, really, really good. I can't wait. So definitely come back. I'll talk to you guys in a few days. This is Paul with the What the Hell podcast.